Hi friends, welcome back. Today I have, I guess you would call it a commission. My parents always every year get Christmas gifts for some of their clients, and this year they had asked me to help figure out what they wanted to get their clients, and I suggested that I could paint ornaments or I could paint little magnets, and we went with magnets. So I have 8 little magnets. I think they're like 3x3 or something like that. And I'm going to paint little winter scenes with some critters. And I thought that would make a really fun video. So let's hang out together and paint some magnets because this sounds like fun. And let me know if you guys want magnets because they make magnets. And I didn't really know that was a thing, but I could totally do these on my website. So let me know what you think. Let's get painting. So I decided that the fastest and probably easiest method would be to work on all of them at the same time. I don't know if that was necessarily the right move, but that's what I ended up doing. So I spent a couple of hours, honestly, doing all of the sketches. I have 8 magnets total. I can't remember if I said that already or not, but I have 8 magnets total. I had planned on just doing wintry scenes and or critters like a squirrel, maybe a bird, a couple of foxes, the usual. But I had spent some time just doing basic sketches and getting an idea of what I wanted to be on each of these so that when it came time to actually paint them, I could potentially do more than one at a time. And that did actually work pretty well. I used a lot of the same colors for these since they were all winter scenes. It was relatively easy to use similar colors for everything, and I think that really helped a lot, and that did kind of make it feel a little bit more cohesive. I know it didn't need to be cohesive because these were all being given to different people, but in my head I still wanted it to look cohesive for the client, aka my mother. So I did my best to make sure that they were all going to look like, basically they were all going to look like a solid collection and not just 8 random paintings. I did want there to be some similarities between them. So you can see a little bit of my sketches on here as I'm working, and these are not necessarily the nicest quality magnets on the planet. It's basically a canvas board on a fairly weak magnet, and because it's canvas board, I'm trying to not use too much paint or too much water because I don't want it to warp. So I am having to be a little bit more careful than I would normally be if I was just working on canvas or even if I was working on wood. Wood can take a decent amount of paint. You have to watch the amount of water you put on them because, as we've experienced, they will crack if you put too much water on them. So I was having to be a little bit more cautious than I had intended, but I still think they came out really nicely, and I don't think that an abundance of caution was necessarily a detriment or anything. I still think they came out really nicely. I did take several days to do these. I spliced together very many videos to make this video happen. I think that I worked on these for a couple of weeks. I spent a lot of time just fiddling with these. I was hoping to be able to do these in real time so that you could see just how long it takes me to do a project like this. But in the end, it was a lot of time. So I ended up doing, I believe, a 3x speed on these just so that we could get through this video and it wouldn't have to be a multi-part series, which I didn't know if I had enough to tell you about these magnets for it to be a multi-part series. You know how it is. But so the first thing I did really was I took my time and I just worked on the backgrounds. I've got my sketches in so I can kind of play with my background colors, I can play with what I want everything to look like. This is the one magnet that I'm working on right now, actually, where I did add a little bit more water just so that I had an idea of how much it could take. And I think it came out really nicely. I like how that one did. I believe I'll add a little bit more to it in a minute here, but beside the point. So I wanted to really just take my time on the backgrounds, make sure that I got that back, the farthest back color exactly where I wanted it before I got too far on these. And there are a couple that I didn't like quite as much, but I thought that I could fix them later on potentially, so I wasn't too concerned about it. Oh, I was wrong. This is the one I added a bunch of water to. It's this one. I knew it was one of the circles. So that one I did like a pretty nice like watercolor treatment to that one. So then I am following my sketches and adding in things like trees just to kind of get the painting to the point that I have an idea of where I'm going with it without having to squint through my sketch, basically. I'm trying to work on them in layers, so background first, and then things like trees, and then I'll work on anything like hills, ground, snow, and of course the last elements will be the critters. This is one of the paintings that I wasn't really loving, but I thought if I added the tree in, maybe I would like it more. And honestly, even looking at it here, I just am not crazy fond of that background. So I'm just going to sit with it and see if I can dial it back, do something with it, see if I can make it a way that I'll actually like the way that it looks. I tried to design all of these to where they would have a decent amount of depth and layering despite being this small. The squares are 3 by 3 inches, I believe. So the circles would be a 3-inch round. And I didn't want it to be a super duper simple design that looked like anybody could have done it, or that looked like it was, I don't want to say the word cheap, but that's the word that's coming to mind, so I'm going to go with cheap. I didn't want them to look cheap. I wanted them to look intentional and well thought out, and I wanted them to look really pretty. I wanted this to be something that someone would receive as a Christmas present and think, oh, I could just keep that on my refrigerator year round. That's really pretty. That's not a thing I necessarily need to pack up. That's a thing I could just leave, because I don't think that you have to take down things that are just wintry in the summer. If you have a painting that you love and it's a winter scene, why wouldn't you hang it year round? That doesn't make sense to me. So I tried to make these with that in mind, of try to make a painting that is beautiful or is cute or even is lovely, in an attempt to make something that somebody would be proud to display no matter the season. I had originally thought of doing more Christmassy designs, so potentially putting like Santa hats on the critters, or even doing like a cute gnome or something. But again, I was running into that issue of I didn't necessarily want this to be something that would get boxed up between seasons. Because this is a hand-painted thing, it would do better to not be boxed up between seasons. It would be happier to live on the fridge. It would still go through a lot of temperature shifts with being on the refrigerator, but I think that the temperature shifts wouldn't be as severe as if it were put in a storage shed for the majority of the year. So, again, the goal is to just make pretty paintings and not necessarily Christmas paintings. I know that these were intended to be Christmas gifts, but that doesn't mean that they have to be fully Christmassy. So here you can see I am starting on the hills, on the ones that have more of that foreground, that hilly foreground that I'm so fond of. And my hope here is that I can make these look like nighttime scenes and snowy, or at least wintry. So I'm working with a couple of different shades of blue and just trying to get a nice amount of shading without taking it too dark. I think in the video this looks a lot darker than it looked in person, or maybe it just looks better after I add snow, I'm not sure, but I didn't think it was this dark when I was painting it. Maybe I was wrong. You never can tell. And now we're back to the one that I didn't like, and I'm thinking maybe if I get the ground to look super pretty, I won't mind the sky so much. There's something about the colors in the sky, and I'm really not fond of it. I just keep playing with this one, and I think I spent more time with this one than I did on the others, just because I was having a hard time figuring out how to fall in love with that composition. I was really liking the composition on all of the rest of them, and that one just, I was not feeling it. It took, I don't know how many sessions. Again, it took a couple of weeks to do all of these, and I touched that one in almost every session, I think, and it just, for a while, never got any better. I do like it by the end, you'll see. So this one I really liked, and I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted there to be two different layers of hill. I liked where the tree was positioned, but I did want there to be almost that layering in the front, but at the same time I liked for the tree to be on the same layer as the character, so I go back and forth. But again, I like how that one turned out in the end. I'm really liking the blues that I picked for the foreground. I think that they went really nicely against the almost greeny wintry sky. I was really uncertain when I did that green for the sky at first, and then the more that I played around with these and the more that I added with blues and with Snow White and just getting in more of the little details, the happier I am with picking the green for the sky color. It reads very wintry to me. I hope that you guys agree. Let me know if you do. I just ended up spending, it was interesting, how do I put this? It's interesting to work on so many paintings at once and to have them all spread out on your desk all at once, because you kind of have to go back and forth in your brain on what am I working on now? What am I doing now? What am I doing next? What color am I using right now? Is this color going to go on a different canvas, or is it only on this one? And that was why I tried to do them, part of why at least, I tried to do them as a very cohesive themed set, because I didn't want to have to get a color out for only one canvas. I did end up doing that. I have a couple of colors that only go on this particular canvas that I'm painting right now. But for the most part, any color that was used was also used on another canvas, and I was working on that canvas at the same time. This way I wasn't wasting as much paint, I wasn't wasting time. I felt like I was getting the most out of my time and getting the most out of my energy, and really getting the most out of my paints and out of my creativity, realistically, because it is not particularly easy to have to go back and forth repeatedly on different canvases and try to remember exactly what you were doing and what you had planned for each one. So I'm trying to set them down in ways, in little groupings, I guess, to try to get myself to remember what I have planned for each canvas. Because I do have intentions on what's going to be on each one. I have thoughts of this one that I'm working on now is going to have a badger. I want to have at least one more that has a badger. It's going to be one of the two that's on the right side of the screen right now. And so I'm trying to group them like that and make it to where I can make sense of it while I'm going. And I don't have to continually stop and be like, wait, which one am I working on? What kind of animal is going to be on here? What color scheme do I need to go with? So at this point, and I was finishing my thought before I said all of this, but at this point I'm working on the characters on a couple of them, because on a few, like this one, I just needed to get the character in and then it was going to be done. And because I was working on so many paintings at the same time, I thought it would be easier on my brain if I could just finish a couple of them, get them done, get them signed, get them set off to the side, and kind of tick that off in my brain that I had at least finished one or two, and that I didn't have to go back to those. I could just set them aside as done, not have to think about it again. And because I did all the backgrounds first, because I then went in and did all of the tree branches, all of the sticks, all of the little brown lines I needed to add in, I could do that. I could how do I put this? I had the ability to actually go in and finish a couple before I went in to add more details on the ones that really needed it. Because of course there are always going to be some in a series that need more detail than others, and there are going to be some, like this bird, that just aren't going to need quite as much attention. And because I knew this cardinal was going to be an easy one, an easy, like, notch in the belt, as it were, I could do this one first, I could finish it, and then, again, just not have to think about it, not have to consider, oh yeah, I still have to go back and do that bird. And I think that orange is actually one of the only colors that I don't use on another canvas. But I really needed it for the beak. Like, cardinal beaks are just this very specific orange, and I didn't need that for anything else. But the rest of the colors that I'm using for this one, I also used on the cardinal. So all of the reds I'm going to reuse, and then the black and the white I'll reuse here, because as you can see from my reference photo on my phone, this one's going to be a badger. This one actually ended up being my favorite of the set. I absolutely love how this one turned out. I think actually that I know who this one was gifted to, and I'm really happy with my parents' decision in who to give this one to, because again, this one was my favorite. I had a really difficult time giving this one away. I know that it was a commission technically, but sometimes you just make a piece and you fall in love with it, and I really did with this one. I loved the way the background came out. I loved every single thing about this. As you'll see as I get going here, the badger just turns out so stinking cute. I love him. I'm really having a lot of fun expanding my animal repertoire. I really like badgers. I hadn't really realized that badgers and foxes are so similar in size. I had always thought of badgers as being bigger than that, but I did some research on it, and they're fairly similar. I mean, foxes are skinnier, but like in terms of height and in terms of just like general size, and like, I don't know, just they're really similar in size. Badgers are a little chubbier, foxes are skinnier, but they're in the same size category, I suppose, is what I would say. And I don't know, I just always thought badgers were bigger than that, but they're not. They're not that big. And I think that makes them even more adorable. I tried to look up pictures of a badger sitting, because I thought, you know, like a little seated badger, that could be cute on one of these. If you have never looked up pictures of sitting badgers, I really, really need you guys to go do that. You will thank me later. It's adorable. They sit kind of like a person. It's real cute. I did not use any of those as my reference photos. So again, then I came up to this painting, which is going to have a little squirrel on it. And I needed to take a break on the badger to let some of his paint dry. So I'm taking a minute to add some detail work to this one. This one, again, isn't going to need that much more work on it, so it's one that I can get done pretty early on in the process. I'm not having to do a lot of back and forth on this. I can add in the detail on the tree trunk and the tree branch. I'll add in some snow at some point, but I'm not having to really go back and forth on it and add a ton of layers because it is a more zoomed in focus, I guess is how I would put it. And here as well, I'm going to go in and add a little more detail to the tree trunks. I'm not sure it's super visible on camera. It's not super visible in person either, but it did look a lot better once I did that. And I don't think I've ever gotten my head in the shot as often as I did working on these. My goodness. So back to my badger. A little bit of the background is showing through, so I asked you to do a second coat on the white and then add in some little details for him, but he's sniffing some berries and it's really cute. He's just adorable. Like I said, there are just some paintings that you do and you look at them and you think to yourself, man, that's really cute. How did I do that? And that's how I feel when I look at this badger. He's just so stinking cute. And I even messed up when I was painting him. I painted some sections the wrong color and had to go back in and fix it. It still turned out adorable. A lot of time making sure that he looked perfect. And then I thought it just needed a little bit of depth, so I came back in with a little more viridian green and just added that little touch of depth to it. I believe this is the next day at this point. And now I'm going to add some snowy details to all of those hills to really make it clear that it is a winter scene. And also try to make it clear that it's nighttime, because snow kind of glints like this. You get almost that blue ground and then white glare when the moonlight hits it. So I was going for that kind of a style. I think it worked pretty well. I would love to know your thoughts on that, though. It's one of those things that I always expect my paint to flow really nicely and it's going to look perfect, and I kept having to add water or add more paint or add more this or add more that, and there were some sections that I'm not super thrilled with, but in the end, again, it came out really nice, and the more I look at it, the more I do actually like it. Just at the time, it's one of those that I think you kind of, especially, I can be a bit of a perfectionist, especially on the smaller pieces, and I think that with ones like this, I really wanted the snow to be absolutely perfect, when honestly, there was no way it was going to be perfect. So here I have mixed a little bit of blue in with my white just to get that really frosty glare on everything, and I think that really made the snow pop. I really love that I made that decision. it wasn't one that I was planning on doing, but I think that it really added a lot of depth to the snow in general. Which meant that for this piece, I kind of skip the white and just stick with the light blue. And I think that it works really well. I think that it gets the point across, and that then I don't have to do as many different colors, which is nice. I don't remember if I add white to it at some point or not. I probably do, so I'm just talking like I didn't use as many colors, and I still do, but you know. It's been a few days since I painted these now that I'm doing the voiceover. Let's be honest, it's December. Ain't nobody got time. The week before Christmas was probably one of the busiest weeks of my life. I had something going on every single day. And I don't normally do that. I am very much an introvert. I try to stay home as much as I can. I love being home. And it was just funny. I had 2 Christmas parties. I had Christmas events. I had just everything going on the week before Christmas. So now here I am, back on the squirrel painting. I did make some changes to a couple of paintings that I forgot to film. The painting that you can see on the left here, I added some branches to the trees. I felt like it was lacking some depth with them just being tree trunks. So I made that little change, and then I added some clouds to the background of this squirrel that I'm working on right now. And as per usual, he's a red squirrel. I haven't ever tried another kind of squirrel. Red squirrels just have those adorable ears, and so that's normally what I stick with. I say normally. This is like my 3rd squirrel, I think. I don't paint them very often. They're kind of funky shaped, and they can be a little bit tricky to paint, but they're very cute, and I thought that it would make a nice painting for this series. I tried to not do all foxes. As I'm sure you could have guessed, the temptation was great to do all foxes. But as you've seen, I have done 3 different animals. I'm very proud of myself. Will there be foxes? Oh, you better believe it. The squirrel is definitely a challenge, but I really like the way that he came out. I know I keep saying that with literally everything, but I am very happy with this series. I tend to, by the time I do voiceover for a video, I have really fallen in love with the piece that I was working on. And so when I do my voiceovers, I feel like I'm just raving about my own work, which feels really weird, but I also think it's really important that you like what you paint and you like what you create. I think it makes you a little bit better in some ways to be like, yeah, I can do that, and not think of it as, oh, I can't do that, I'm not good enough. But to be like, look, no, I can do that thing. And even if it's not necessarily perfect, to be able to look at it and go, look, I can do it, and I'm going to do it more, and I'll get better over time. And then even with things like the squirrel, my last squirrel that I painted, he was okay. This one's really cute. He's a little bit chubby, and it's really cute. He's got a cute look on his face. I like him. I think he's a lot better than the last squirrel that I painted, and I'm honestly really proud of him. And I'm really proud of me for doing a squirrel. That was originally going to be another cardinal, which I've painted those a few times, and they're not that difficult. As promised, here's our first fox. I think this is also one of the bigger animals that I painted. I tried to stick with smaller ones just because the canvas size is so small. So the other ones I try to focus a little more on the background, where this one, I like the background, but it's not my favorite. So I thought, well, let's make a really cute fox then. And that part can be my favorite. So when I'm painting foxes for my Fox and the Fairy series, my fox is crimson red. But if I'm trying to paint a more realistic fox, I use red oxide. Sometimes I'll use a little bit of brown or a little bit of crimson in there just to add a little bit of depth. And then of course black and white. Oh, and I'll use burnt sienna too to add some shading to his fur. And that's basically fox colored, honestly. When I bought red oxide, I bought it purely because I said to myself, this is the color of a fox. It may as well be called fox red. It's just kind of, it's that ruddy brown that's fox colored. Very cute. It's perfect. I will admit that all of the foxes that I did for these paintings are based off reference photos that I've used before. And I think that was mainly because I knew that I could do those shapes. I could do them quickly and easily, and they would come out really well. I really wanted this to be, again, just a pretty painting and not necessarily a unique painting, I guess is what I'm going for. It should be pretty and it should be a thing that you're proud to have on your fridge, but I also don't want it to be such a standout piece because, again, it's a 3x3 painting. And while for some people you would say that it should be the most standout piece ever, I am not that artist. When I'm doing more naturalistic, more realistic stuff like this, and I'm not working on my fantasy series, I don't want it to be slap you in the face with color. I want it to be lovely and muted and strong on detail. And while yes, it's beautiful, it's not something that's going to slap you in the face with color and draw your attention for being colorful. But there's 2 more. Done. Progress. So here I'm doing another little fox. This one is, I think, the smallest that I do. And let me tell you, I'm really glad that I have little bitty paintbrushes. They make doing tiny details and tiny animals much easier. I am very thankful that I made the decision to buy all the tiny brushes a while back. I like them for doing the little ornaments and stuff like that, and then for doing the magnets, that just worked out really well. I didn't actually have time to paint many of my little mini ornaments this year. I did a few as gifts, but I didn't get to paint any for me or for my tree, which makes me a little bit sad, but my hope is that I can paint several over the coming year, and that when we get close to, I don't know, October, November, by then hopefully I will have my website launched and I can have mini canvases and little ornaments available for you guys. So I think that would be really fun, and I just really like how the ornaments and the little minis look. I think they're very cute. They are harder. There's not as much detail you can do on something this small without having a magnifying glass and a really tiny paintbrush. But I still think that they come out really nicely, and I think it's really fun to have something that's this little to be able to look at and say, yeah, I painted that. That's really good, isn't it? That's real cute. And there he is, one more fox. And I believe this one will be the last fox of the series. The next 2 are going to be badgers. Well, one of them at this point in painting I know is going to be a badger, and the other one is kind of a question mark, but I'm leaning toward badger. I was asked to paint an animal on each of them, so that's really the only thing that I have to go off. My mother requested winter scenes and animals, and that was all she had to say. So I was really left with my own creativity for making these, and that made it a really fun project. I think this is the type of commission that I would be willing to do if I ever did open for commissions, would be something where we have a conversation and see if my vision matches what the client wants. And if it does, great, and if it doesn't, no worries. But I don't want to feel like I'm forced to paint something that I don't want to paint just because I have a client that wants it and wants it from me. And I know there's a lot of artists out there who will paint in those circumstances, but I just don't want to be one of those. So I'm not going to. And that's all there is. I don't think there's anything wrong with either way either. I think if you like doing commissions, then fabulous. And if you don't, then fabulous. I know that there are artists who do commissions and artists who don't, and I don't think there's a problem either way. So here I am, back on the one that I don't like, and I'm going to try adding in some clouds just to see if I can make that background be something I'm happy with. And right about here is when I realized that I'm just not happy with it at all. So I got some Prussian blue, and I'm covering it. Covering the whole thing, the whole background. I don't like it. I have decided that we are going to do a different color on this one. This is going to be the only one that has a blue sky. And that's fine by me. Because I don't like the color that it is now. I think I just had too much of the Viridian green on the background originally, and that was making it not work the way that I wanted it to. So, new color, and we'll see how it looks when we're done. But here we're going to use that same technique and add some clouds in the background just to give it a little bit more dimension. Probably should have done that before I painted in the tree, but shrug. What you gonna do? So here I'm adding in snow, of course. I don't know why I hadn't done that on this one yet. I think it just wasn't on my radar at the time, so I didn't even think of it, but the time has come for it to be snowified. Yes, snowified. The snow has fallen. This tree in the background is kind of giving me trouble, but oh well, I think it came out fine. I think at some point I decided it's not worth making it be, or it's not worth having a bunch of blue around it. It should just be a snowy hill in the background that has a tree on it. And I think that was a wise decision, honestly. Here I'm just adding a little bit more detail into that tree trunk just to make it look more like a tree trunk. I think with adding in the snow, I kind of erased some of the root and wanted to make sure that that was not happening anymore. All right. It needs branches. And I remembered because the last time I painted branches on one of these trees that didn't have branches, that I never hit record on my camera. So this time I thought to myself, you need to record it. So here we are, and here it is, recorded, just for you. And I really think that it added a lot. I was thinking it was going to be a bit more zoomed in of a painting than this, but it just wasn't. I skipped so much recording though. This painting was giving me such trouble that I I turned the camera off and I just focused on getting it where I wanted it. I added stars, I added snow on the tree branches, I added some rocks, and now here I am adding in a little badger. I think at some point in this mess my camera might have died too. I don't even know. These last two paintings were a little bit of a shambles, but you know what? We got there in the end. It came out really well, and I am happy with how they look. I think that they came out really nicely. It was a really fun project to work on, and I think I would do it again. No, I would definitely do it again. I would do a project like this for somebody if they wanted. Especially with the parameters of just being wintry scenes with animals, whatever you want. That was fine. I can do that. I have enough ideas for that. Come on. But no, this was a fun one to work on. I am pleased with how all of the badgers came out. They kind of are just, from the side, they can look a lot like a large hamster. So I had to really convince myself that I had not just painted large hamsters. But they are in fact badgers, and they are really cute. And again, I'm really happy with how they came out. So really quick, for the end of this video, here are all of our little paintings. Thanks, guys.